Using Global Tail Link.
Hi. Welcome to Inmate Tea. This is April.
And this is Patricia. So today, what are we going to talk about, Alphonza?
Yes, I am ready. Today we're going to be talking about... So, listeners, hi. I'm Thomas, the Innocent, here to explain unconstitutional sentences of blacks. Most legal disputes are settled upon answering questions. So I ask, if a law that gives a person a life without parole sentence is used disproportionately upon the black race in the state of North Carolina and the several states, is it a violation of the Equal Protection Clause and Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment and cruel and unusual punishment under the 8th Amendment? Now, to understand most things, it is important to know its origin and history. Mm-hmm. And I will do this in part with an example. Using last name for privacy purposes of the person affected. Mm-hmm. His name is Mason. He has been in prison for 37 years.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
He's been in prison for 37 years under a life sentence with parole, which was once deemed fair sentencing. However, these sentences disproportionately affected blacks, and parole boards could turn any one of them down for any little reason and effectively keep them in prison till death. Mason has been eligible for parole for 22 years. Now, under the sentence, life without parole, which I was sentenced under, an overwhelming number of blacks are disproportionately sentenced. I come to you today to educate you on this issue of unconstitutional sentences. According to the Equal Protection Clause and Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, this type of disproportionate effect is unlawful. So one critic might say, yeah, well, you did something bad and deserve that sentence. To the critics, I have a twofold rebuttal. Namely, internationally, a life sentence is 20 to 25 years flat. In most jurisdictions, it's a long, stiff penalty with a certain release date, effectively not making these sentences a death sentence. Yet some will argue that if the U.S. or North Carolina does the flat sentence, it would still disproportionately affect blacks. And I would say they are correct because no one that is pessimistic expects district attorneys at the county level to all of a sudden treat blacks equal in a country and state where the law is based on Jim Crowism, black codes, apartheid, and neocolonialism. So, we are left with the question of what to do. My answer is take the good with the bad, find a happy medium that I would say is to give flat sentences, because it's a bad look on our legal system to imprison blacks for life disproportionately when they make up the greater percentage of prison enterprises that pay these blacks cents per hour to do jobs that profit the states millions, where these profits are kicked back to police, sheriffs, and courts via products and services produced by these enterprises. Now, as for me, I'm under one of these life without parole unconstitutional sentences, and I am innocent of the crime 100%. I took my case to trial. A witness took the stand and testified that I did not commit the crime, then pointed out who did commit the crime, and explained exactly how I could not have been the one who committed the crime. The prosecutor's case was shattered. My jury was hung. I was going home. So how did I end up in prison for 15 years, an innocent man with a hung jury? Well, the prosecutor said to the jury that the reason I remained silent during trial was because I was guilty, and that a guilty person remains silent, and that I am a monster because of it, who must be convicted. So the jury, reflecting on this unconstitutional statement, reconvened and went from hung to a unanimous guilty verdict. That is what makes my life without parole unconstitutional sentence even more unconstitutional. And listeners, I need your help. To one, prove my trial was unconstitutional and prove my innocence. And two, fight the battle against life without parole sentences. Now let's go over a life without parole sentence person who has had what I call a unmeaningful hope of getting parole. For privacy purposes, we will call him Hayward. Hayward has been in prison 26 years and has focused on a North Carolina statute number 15A-1380.5 that allows these life without parole sentences to be reviewed every 25 years by a resident Superior Court judge, which he is eligible for. This judge looks for criteria of 25 years imprisonment, then considers the trial record, if any, the prison record, any input from the victim's immediate family, the health condition of the imprisoned, any perceived degree of risk to society should the imprisoned be released, and any other information that may come to the judge's attention. Get this, the judge's review only produces a recommendation that then goes to the governor and any other agency designated for the final decision to release. From my observation, Hayward would be a model citizen if released. I look at his work ethic, mild manners, light heart, and peaceful disposition. Listeners, we are on the eve of Hayward's third such review. His sentence is approaching 27 years. And of all life without parole sentences, This process has released less than 1% of those with life without parole. It appears none of these processes that exist provide a meaningful chance for release of any lifers. So, several prison advocacy groups have applied for recommendations from the United Nations on these issues. The United Nations recommended the United States should end life without parole sentences and place all lifers on an attainable parole program, and the U.S. has yet to do anything about these recommendations given in 2023. The conclusion is lifers affected must take these findings on the disproportionate sentencing that affects them and take action in a constitutional form. While we have time, I'll explain even further the unconstitutionality of these sentences. In North Carolina, the parole process for life with parole persons and the 25-year review process for life without parole persons both take into account prison records of the person sentenced. I know firsthand how these prison records can be absolutely frivolous. For example, early one morning, I'm in my cell. 10 police bust in at 4 a.m., search my cell, take me to another cell, then an operating room to be x-rayed. All because they were looking for a cell phone that I didn't know anything about. They found no phone, then put on the investigation report, no physical evidence found. They still charged me, put me in the hole, and I appealed and even filed a lawsuit.
They charged you with
and
it?
all to no avail.
Even though they never
Oh, yeah,
found a
they
phone
found no
or
phone.
anything?
Don't they have
Right.
to have proof?
And they, okay, get this. They had no phone. Phone was non-existent. I was charged for a non-existent phone. And these prison officials were tipped off by another inmate who wanted his disciplinary charges relaxed in exchange for information.
Okay.
So, the report kind of reads that there was a confidential informant. So he gave bogus information, and they just ran with it.
Yeah.
And that is typical for prison investigations.
We've heard this
Also-
before about confidential informants.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, one could be charged with things such as not making your bed, an untucked shirt, or even appearing to be high.
Mm-hmm.
There are many people who suffer from allergies and dry eyes and red eyes have been charged who claim to have never consumed drugs a day in their life. And what we're talking about is unconstitutional sentencing. But what's happening is judicial decisions are being made by prison officials with no judicial decision experience. Okay? And the translation is a person like Mason serves 22 extra years for make-believe charges while being worked in a prison enterprise, profiting the state millions. So this is what I call on the freedom fighters for, to fight this fight. Because if you put the decision to give somebody some charge in prison into the hands of someone who's not a judge, and that person effectively serves another life sentence, they may as well have went to court all over again and got another life sentence. See, the sentence that Mason's under was given around 1994 or so. Any sentences before 1994, you had a life sentence where you could get parole. Okay, so he's been depending on getting parole, and then he's turned down time after time again during the 22-year period, not because he killed somebody, but because he basically has all these prison charges that are trumped up.
Are you referring to infractions?
I'm implying
this call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
We're talking about infractions that people deem that you have done, that they just hire off the street, who read the sign outside of the prison that says open hires any day, that just come in and get a job, and then they charge people, okay, with these prison infractions.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you come up for parole, they look at your prison record, whether you have a life without parole or a life with parole, whatever the review may be. And now you can't get out of prison because of some thing that really isn't even a crime in the outside world. So you're basically giving judicial power to people who are not judges, is what it effectively boils down to.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people look at these infractions. You know, even on the news, you see anytime there's an article about somebody incarcerated, they always want to bring up the number of infractions that they have, like that means something. But you're saying, these can be bogus charges, correct?
That's right. They can be bogus charges. The investigations have no resources at all. It's just someone sitting at a desk hoping that they can gather information from another inmate, hoping they could see something on camera that can tie you to the scene or whatever.
That was my question. Don't you guys have cameras? You would think that they would have to provide the proof from the camera, from, actually confiscating whatever the item was that they got in trouble for, or whatever they did. You would think that there would have to be some line of proof if they can give somebody a life sentence, or, not allow them to get out of prison based off of something that was just made up. That just doesn't seem right. What is their leg to stand on here?
Okay. I must admit there are cases where they take pictures. I've seen that. Okay. So they do have some type of protocol where they gather evidence, but there's also things that there's no evidence to be gathered. For example, you could have 26 postage stamps, and the limit you're supposed to have is 25. Well, this isn't a crime to have postage stamps, but in prison, it's going to read as an infraction on your record.
Oh my God.
So someone like Mason could have, an extra stamp past what he's supposed to have. Maybe he had planned on doing a lot of mailing that month. Maybe it's Christmas time, or he's sending out cards, whatever. Yeah, and that'll go on his record, and the parole commission will look at it. Or if on the other hand, with Mr. Hayward, his 25-year review could come up, and the parole commission or judge or whoever could see that. And now they're using that as a reason to not let him back into society because he breaks rules. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you were in society, that's not one of the rules that would have to be broken to get you into prison.
Right,
but it's also what can keep you in prison.
Yeah, and these...
It seems silly to us, but that's a big deal. That's life-changing in there.
It is.
Life-changing decisions that they put in the hands of people who are of such a low caliber that it infuriates me.
Yeah.
But that's what's going on.
And we've had other inmates on that have spoke about this charge, this appearing high charge.
Right.
You know, that doesn't even require a drug test to confirm that the person is high. And they're getting infractions because they may have just got something in their eye.
Or they could have just tripped and they thought that they were high. Or, you know, they could have taken a drug test and then I guess the guard would claim that it was positive with no proof to the inmate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You know, I see it time and time again. I know one guy, we'll call him House, and he doesn't get high. He has kind of a moody disposition about himself, so he has like a mean face. And he woke up one morning and his eyes were red because he had allergies. He walked around the prison yard, and they just asked him, "Are you high?" And he said, "No, I'm not high." And they wrote him up for appearing to be high. And that's just how easy it is. So you have all of these people across the United States. You have all these people in North Carolina that have these types of life sentences that are subject to these things. So that makes it even more unconstitutionally a sentence, you know, beside the disproportionate treatment.
Alphonza, that was great information because I truly did not realize that an infraction in prison could keep you in prison. And I thought that it would prevent you from certain things inside of there. Like you couldn't use the phone, you couldn't, I thought it was like punishment from things that you want to do in there. I didn't realize it would keep you from getting out of prison.
No, it's very reminiscent of, U.S. Steel and the coal mining places back in the 1920s that just arrested people and, kept them extra years because they didn't dig enough coal or mine enough steel or whatever. It's very reminiscent of that.
Who made this law? Who passed this? Who said this was okay? What leg do they have to stand on here? Who's even approving these? I mean, doesn't it have to get approved for the infractions? They can't just put it on your record, can they?
Yeah, they can put it right on your record. It's all handled within the prison from the prison guards. They have these officials called judicial officials. I'm not sure what that stands for, but you stand before them sort of like in a court setting, but they're not judges. And, they just ask you, are you guilty or not guilty? How do you plead? And if you say I'm not guilty, then they go to taking all your privileges. If you say you're guilty, they might suspend taking the privileges and kind of, just let the charge sit. But you still get charged. It's still on your record. All right. Now, I realize that this is not all about blacks. Listeners, this movement is a fight for freedom for all, meaning ending the seemingly undeterminable life sentences and changing them to flat sentences would help black and white and all lifers alike. So this movement is universal in its character. Now, the burden is big, meaning the U.S. is not going to admit they are targeting people because they're black and just resentence everybody. And the treaties that have been used to show the unconstitutionality of sentences, such as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, they're not what you call self-executing. So the people that are affected basically have to take their issues into a court. Okay? So there has to be some type of legislation passed to make these things self-executing. And that is actually the bigger fight for the masses. But that stuff, it may never happen. They may never pass legislation to make these treaties effective to respect our rights to live, our rights to have a flat sentence. So until the big change that may never come, people with these sentences need to make challenges in the courts themselves. And a precedent must be set. Others must follow, because these unconstitutional sentences, it's only going to get help through those affected taking action for themselves. Now, I know your funds will help at least one innocent person and countless other unconstitutionally sentenced blacks. For more information, you can go to the UNHCR website. I'm Thomas the Innocent. Thanks for listening. May God help us all. Amen.
Okay, so we had a couple of questions, if we could. One question that I have is, do you think that blacks are the only ones affected by the unconstitutional over-sentencing? Or do you, being in prison, do you see that it affects other races as well?
Okay. Black is such a murky word. I don't know what you would really say other races are, but, you have Hispanics, I guess. You have other people of color. Let's just say it that way.
Yeah.
And I see it affecting all people of color, really. And the very definition, to go with your question of disproportionate, it's disproportionate to your white counterpart, is how they break it down in law. So, yes, the answer is yes. I do see it affecting people other than classified as black. So it may affect Hispanics. It may affect people of different colors or classifications. But to sum it up, it affects people of color. And the sentences are disproportionate to white counterparts. So the white counterparts are people that effectively have the same crime or the same situations, but didn't really receive the life sentence. And some would argue that the sentencing structure here in North Carolina doesn't allow for that. And looking at it word for word, they're probably right. But what you find is things happening in white cases where the charge is lessened because of some circumstance that is pulled out or whatever the case may be. And these things lead to the disproportionate effect. Yeah.
Okay. What about the Structured Sentencing Act and people sentenced under that act? Do you feel like those people are also unconstitutionally being sentenced under that act?
Yeah, structured sentencing does disproportionately affect the blacks.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
They are definitely unconstitutionally sentenced, black people, under structured sentencing, just like they were under fair sentencing. Nothing has changed to that effect.
Okay. Do you feel that misrepresentation and ineffective assistance at counsel plays a major role in the over-sentencing of people of color?
Yeah, I would say so. And, to say that, you would have to ask some deeper questions like, okay, well, this person that has a legal mind that's representing you, why wouldn't they bring out the facts that would get you sentenced to something lesser than life? Mm-hmm. And, I can't read minds, but you couldn't help but think that something insidious is going on, and that's just the gist of it.
Alphonza, do you feel like judges are sentencing individuals based off of, if they're poor or, maybe by the way that they look or they're uneducated? Does that play any role, do you think?
Okay. That definitely plays a role. I study different states, and I'm sure that it plays a role in Florida, who has the three strikes law, where you catch 3 felonies and get a life sentence.
Yeah.
Because within their statutes, it reads that this is discretionary. So just looking at the disproportionate sentencing of blacks, not only in Florida, but, across the nation, and you look at things like language in a statute where judges have discretion, for catching 3 felonies and getting a life sentence, even for nonviolent crimes, I do think that judges play a role in that. So judges play a role, district attorneys play a role, investigators play a role, and it's sad. It's sad because when you say that, it implies that there is a plot against a people, and flat out, that's what it is. Yeah, I just, I have a law library on this tablet, which is great for these types of things. So,
well, you were very knowledgeable.
I'm just ready.
You definitely educated us.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. Thank you guys. But if that's it, I'll go ahead and let you guys go, and I'll be looking forward to that letter.
All right.
Thank you so much.
This call is from a North Carolina correctional facility.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, ladies. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.